Welcome to my channel Aethon Signal. The first thing Elias Mercer noticed about the sky above Aethon Prime was that it shimmered. Not blue, not black. It shimmered in layered bands of violet and silver, like oil floating across a cosmic sea. 3 suns hung at different distances, their light filtered through the planet's atmospheric lattice, a natural electromagnetic veil that made everything below gleam faintly, as if the world itself was polished. The second thing he noticed was the silence. 10,000 students from 200 species stood in perfect formation on the grand concourse of the Galactic Academy of Unified Civilizations. Chitinous exoskeletons clicked softly, feathery crests rippled in nervous anticipation. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along gelatinous forms. Hover chairs hummed. Multi-limbed scholars adjusted data slates with surgical precision. And in the center of it all stood a single human. Elias adjusted the collar of his charcoal uniform. It was tailored to Terran standards, though the fabric had been upgraded to accommodate minor radiation fluctuations and atmospheric variance. He felt very small. A hovering prism amplified a resonant voice across the concourse. Students of the Galactic Academy, intoned Principal Valoran, welcome to the commencement of the unified cycle. Principal Valoran was a towering member of the Caliph Concord, tall, elongated, their skin like polished obsidian streaked with faint silver veins. 4 luminous eyes regarded the assembly with calm authority. Their voice carried a harmonic undertone, as if 2 minds spoke in perfect synchronization. A subtle shift moved through the crowd as Valoran's gaze settled on Elias. This cycle, the principal continued, marks the first formal inclusion of a representative from the species-designated humanity, originating from the planet Earth in the Sol system. A murmur rippled through the gathered students. Elias resisted the urge to wave. Valoran descended the platform steps with slow, deliberate grace until they stood a few meters from him. Before integration proceeds, the principal said, there is a matter of policy that must be addressed. Elias felt hundreds, no, thousands, of alien eyes lock onto him. The principal's 4 eyes narrowed slightly. No weapons on campus, Valoran declared. The words echoed across the concourse. Elias blinked. That includes projectile accelerators, plasma emitters, molecular destabilizers, gravitational shear devices, and any concealed armament of Terran origin. A faint flicker of tension passed through the alien faculty standing nearby. Elias smiled. It wasn't a smug smile. It wasn't defiant. It was the kind of small, almost amused smile someone might give after hearing an inside joke. Valoran tilted their head. You find this directive humorous, human? No, Principal, Elias replied evenly. I find it reassuring. A few translators emitted confused chirps. Reassuring? Valoran asked. Yes, Elias said, because it means you're worried about what I might bring. The silence deepened. Valoran straightened. Your species has a documented history of kinetic warfare, asymmetric combat, and the development of weapons disproportionate to your technological maturity. We would be negligent not to clarify. Elias nodded politely. Understood. But I didn't bring any weapons. The principal studied him for a long moment. See that you never do. Life at the academy was structured like clockwork forged from starlight. Students attended courses on xenophysics, interspecies diplomacy, quantum ethics, stellar engineering, and cultural synthesis. Every hallway shifted subtly to accommodate the gravity and atmospheric preferences of its occupants. Translation fields hummed, constantly, smoothing over linguistic chaos. Elias was assigned to cohort SIGMA-9, a group specializing in conflict resolution and strategic systems analysis. His classmates were varied. There was Taral of the Merhive, an insectoid being whose thoughts occasionally manifested as pheromonal bursts Elias couldn't perceive. Celiera of the Veil, whose translucent skin revealed a faintly glowing circulatory network. Gorvik, a hulking Drathari with armored plating and a voice like grinding stone. On the first day of tactical theory, Professor Ithrix projected a holographic battlefield into the center of the chamber. Today, Ithrix announced, their tendrils weaving in complex patterns, we analyze escalation thresholds between hostile civilizations. The hologram depicted two planetary powers locked in orbital standoff. SIGMA-9, the professor said, what is the optimal de-escalation strategy? Tyrrell emitted a clicking series of responses. Celiera proposed economic sanctions and shared resource treaties. Gorvik suggested limited orbital dominance to force negotiation. Ithrix's many eyes turned to Elias. And the human? Elias leaned back slightly. What's the cultural context? He asked. A faint pause. Ithrix adjusted the projection. The aggressor species has a cultural identity rooted in honor-based dominance hierarchies. And the defender? Collectivist. Resource scarce. Elias nodded slowly. Then de-escalation won't work. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Clarify, Ithrix demanded. The aggressor doesn't want resources, Elias said. They want acknowledgement. If the defender tries sanctions or subtle diplomacy, it'll be seen as weakness. Gorvik's heavy brow ridges shifted. So you advocate war? No, Elias replied. I advocate perception management. He stood, stepping toward the hologram. Stage a limited, controlled demonstration of overwhelming capability. Not an attack, a display. Make it clear escalation would be catastrophic, but stop short of actual damage. Then offer a path for the aggressor to claim symbolic victory without bloodshed. Celiera's bioluminescence flickered. You suggest manipulation of pride. I suggest understanding it, Elias said. Professor Ithrix was very still. Your species has employed this tactic. Elias shrugged. Variations of it. For a few thousand years. When class ended, whispers followed him down the corridor. Humans, it seemed, did not need weapons to be unsettling. The first incident occurred 3 weeks later. It began with a scream. Not a human scream. Something sharper, layered, resonant in frequencies Elias felt in his teeth before he heard it. The Academy's central spire trembled. Emergency glyphs flared crimson along the walls. Containment breach in Sector ARX-7, an automated voice announced. Students scattered in a coordinated panic. Gravity fluctuated as stabilization systems struggled to compensate. Elias braced himself against a support column as the floor rippled like disturbed water. A massive shape crashed through the far end of the corridor, a creature of writhing limbs and crystalline bone structures. Its surface refracted light into chaotic patterns. Xylurian void predator, someone shouted. The creature roared, a sound like glass shattering in vacuum. Security drones swooped in, emitting containment beams. The beams distorted, bent, and snapped as the creature absorbed the energy. Elias, pulse hammered. No weapons on campus. He scanned the corridor. Students were trapped behind a collapsed archway. Gorvik was pinned under debris. Celiera's glow flickered erratically. The predator surged forward. Elias moved. Not toward an armory. Not toward a weapon. Toward a control panel. He slammed his palm against the emergency interface. Alien glyphs cascaded across the screen. Access denied, the system chimed. Override, Elias muttered. Manual environmental shift. He remembered a lecture. Xylurian predators adapted to energy-rich environments. They fed on radiation gradients. Fine, he whispered. Let's starve it. He rerouted power from the corridor's lighting and stabilization grid, plunging the area into near darkness. Temperature dropped sharply as he triggered atmospheric dampening. The predator faltered. Its crystalline limbs flickered. Elias pushed further, venting trace radiation reserves into sealed conduits, isolating the corridor into a low-energy pocket. The creature shrieked, smaller now, Movements sluggish. Security drones recalibrated and re-engaged. This time, the containment field held. The Predator collapsed into inert crystal fragments. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of repressurization. Gorvik stared at Elias. You carried no weapon, the Drathari rumbled. Elias exhaled shakily. Didn't need one. Principal Valoran summoned him that evening. The office overlooked the shimmering cityscape of Aethon Prime. Energy bridges arced between towers like strands of woven lightning. You accessed restricted environmental controls, Valoran said without turning. Yes, Elias admitted. You violated 3 procedural safeguards. Yes. You saved 42 students. Elias said nothing. Valoran finally faced him. Your species improvises under stress with alarming efficiency. Thank you, Elias offered. This is not praise. Elias smiled faintly. Valoran studied him again, that same careful, analytical gaze from the first day. When I stated, no weapons on campus, the principal said slowly, I assumed the threat would come from objects. Elias tilted his head. And now, he asked. Now I suspect, Valoran replied, that the more formidable element you carry is cognitive. Elias chuckled softly. Principal, every species here has something dangerous. We just specialize in thinking sideways. Valoran's luminous eyes dimmed slightly, a caliph expression of contemplation. There are factions within the Concord who opposed humanity's admission, the principal said. They cited volatility, aggression, unpredictability. And you? Elias asked. I cited potential. The true test came at the end of the cycle. A coalition of extremist students, primarily from species historically wary of humanity, hijacked the Academy's central AI nexus during a cultural symposium. They intended to broadcast a declaration. Humanity's presence destabilized interstellar harmony. What they hadn't anticipated was that Elias had been studying the Academy's network architecture for months. When the emergency lockdown sealed the symposium hall, trapping hundreds inside, panic surged. The extremists demanded humanity's removal. Security forces hesitated. Any forced breach risked triggering the AI's defensive protocols capable of collapsing entire sections of the spire. Elias stepped forward. Open a channel, he said. Valoran hesitated only a fraction of a second before nodding. The holographic feed flickered on, revealing the extremists clustered around the AI core. You prove our point. One shouted. Your kind brings chaos. Elias folded his hands behind his back. You're right, he said calmly. The extremists faltered. We do bring chaos, Elias continued. We evolved on a death world. Unstable climate, apex predators, constant scarcity. Chaos is home. He paced slowly. But chaos isn't destruction. It's change. He glanced at the AI core. You're trying to preserve stability by force. That's not harmony, that's fear. One of the hijackers snarled. You think words will stop us? No, Elias said. I think understanding will. He began describing their species' historical marginalization within the Concord. He cited trade imbalances, cultural dismissals, subtle biases in representation metrics. The extremists exchanged uncertain glances. You're angry, Elias said softly. And you're not entirely wrong to be. Silence stretched. But removing humanity won't fix that. It just gives the Concord a new scapegoat. The AI's defensive hum wavered. You want acknowledgement? Elias asked. Let's negotiate structural reform. I'll stand with you in the council chamber. Why? One whispered. Elias smiled, the same quiet smile from the first day. Because you're not my enemy. You're my classmates. Minutes later, the AI core disengaged from lockdown. No shots fired, no weapons drawn, just conversation. At the closing ceremony, Principal Valoran addressed the Academy once more. This cycle has challenged our assumptions, they said. We believed weapons were forged from metal and energy. Their gaze settled on Elias. We have learned that the most potent force on this campus is not armament, but adaptability. Elias stood among his cohort, no longer the lone human curiosity, but a recognized presence. No weapons on campus, Valoran concluded, remains our policy. A faint ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. But we now understand that some species carry their greatest strength within. Elias looked up at the shimmering sky of Aethon Prime. He had arrived as a potential threat. He was leaving as something else entirely. Not a warrior, not a conqueror, a reminder. Humanity did not need weapons to change the galaxy. Sometimes, all it took was a smile, and the willingness to think differently when everyone else reached for a blade. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more cinematic science fiction stories.